Cimoooooooo! Welcome to Tech Tuesday, a weekly series where we discuss some awesome tech cards as well as help make you a better player. This week's card is Necrovalley, an incredibly old yet incredibly powerful field spell that's really gonna lock down your opponent. Necrovalley has three separate effects. The first effect is that all Gravekeeper monsters gain 500 attack and defense. The second effect is that cards in both players' graveyards cannot be banished. And finally, the third effect is that any time an effect would activate that would move a card in the graveyard to any other location other than the card itself, that effect gets negated. Now, why is this card a good tech card? Well, let's break down each of the three effects of Necrovalley and analyze it in context of the meta and see how we can best use Necrovalley to our advantage. So as it stands, the meta has kind of defined itself as being Necros and Shaddolls, with a little splash of Satellar Knights and Burning Abyss here and there. But we're going to primarily focus on Necros and Shaddolls for the context of Necrovalley. The first effect is pretty irrelevant as no Gravekeeper decks are being played at the moment. But if you happen to want to play Gravekeepers, that 500 attack and defense gain is pretty nice. Now the second effect, cards in either player's graveyard cannot be banished. This is huge if you're going up against Necros for a couple reasons. The first reason is that the Necros player is not going to be allowed to banish their mirrors or their other Necros monsters to be able to search more mirrors out of their deck. The second reason is that with Necrovalley out, you are not going to be able to get trished because your opponent is not going to be allowed to banish a card from your graveyard to fulfill that requirement. And finally, as long as Necrovalley's out, you don't have to worry about Valk whatsoever, because since they can't banish a card from the graveyard to trigger Valk, you don't have to worry about anything. In the context of Shaddolls don't really banish really at all, but it does prevent BLS from being dropped on you, so you can look at it as kind of a good deterrent in that sense. Now the third effect. This effect has been confusing ever since this card was printed, and I think it's had like 5 or 6 different wording changes so they could finally get the wording on it correctly so that it's applied in the way they intended it. So basically, anytime an effect is activated that would move a card in the graveyard to a different location other than the card itself, that effect gets negated. So what does this mean for us? Well, we've already gone into all of the restricting ways that the Necros player can no longer banish cards. However, this further effect prevents the Necros player from pitching Unicorn to add Necros cards back to their hand, since Unicorn would be moving a card from the graveyard to the hand. And that's really big because it stops Valk recycling, or really just any form of recycling in general. What's really cool about this third effect is that it also prevents the Necros player from using Necros Cycle to special summon one of their Necros monsters from the graveyard. Because since it would be moving a monster from the grave to the field, Necrovalley would negate that, and that's really cool. Now this third effect applies a lot more to Shaddolls than it does to Necros. For example, it'll stop the flip effect of Shaddall Falco, since Falco would be moving a monster from the graveyard to the field. And it also stops the fusion monsters from adding back the fusion spells from the graveyard to the hand when the fusion monsters hit grave. And being able to stop the cycling of the fusion spells is critical in the Shaddall match. And finally, just to quickly delve into Satellar Knights and Burning Abyss a little bit, for Satellar Knights, they're going to have a really hard time bringing back their Deneb from the grave with their Altair, their Call of the Haunted, their Oasis, because all of those cards will get negated since they would be moving Deneb from the graveyard back to the field. And Burning Abyss is the same way. It'll shut down Dante from adding Burning Abyss cards back from the grave to their hand, and it'll also stop, anything like Seer, which can be really good because the Dante Seer loop is just incredible, and being able to shut that down is just absolutely key. Let me know down in the comments what you all think about Necrovalley. I feel like Necrovalley has a lot of untapped potential right now. And even though it does a lot to hinder meta decks, I feel like meta decks could run it because in a well-timed situation, that card could just be a complete blowout. Thank you all so much for watching the video. We'll see you next week.